Hey,
Hey.
calling Chris Anderson.
Hey, how are you?
I see you. You look like you're in Windsor,
I do.
but I think this is airing a couple of weeks after we've recorded it. So you're someplace
I think
doing
this
what?
time, I don't know. I think I'm either in Luxembourg. No, I won't be in Luxembourg. I think this time I'm in Italy.
Okay. Oh, right, because you're moving to Italy
Yes. Well, it kind of feels that way. It does. It does in fact feel that way.
for
Yeah.
like a month. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would be in Boston.
Really?
Just starting the am I just starting? Yeah, just starting the oh, the Revolutionary War.
Aren't you
I
supposed to
don't
be?
know. Boston
Aren't
took
you,
it back.
aren't you supposed to be seeing my daughter there?
Yes, I am hanging out with your daughter
Wow. Say hi to her for me.
in Boston in the future that I'm projecting into. The future present as it is.
Yes. As it
Because
were.
this is an encore episode. Welcome everybody to History Happy Hour. It does seem like we've been imbibing already. Thanks to Stephen Ambrose Historical Tours for helping to bring you this show and send Chris and I around the world. Check out their rich offering of military history tours at stephenambrosetours.com. And whether you're watching live, watching on replay, or listening on the HHH
Podcast.
Oh, beautifully done. We're glad you're here. And today we'll present an encore episode on the World War II story of Company E of the 141st Infantry, 36th Division, composed entirely of Mexican Americans.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so let us know what you're drinking. And Chris, we should thank everybody who supports us on Patreon.
Absolutely, we should.
Say something nice about them.
Well, they're wonderful people, obviously wise beyond their years, insightful, inquisitive, generally all around good
Supportive,
folks.
very supportive.
Oh, yep, supportive, that too.
Yes.
And they all have keen fashion sense because they have incredible hats.
Yes, and you can get a hat. You can join this august group by clicking on patreon.com/historyhappyhour.
You know, I think if we get any more of those, though, we might actually have to go to like the scrolling patron page because we're starting to.
Oh my God! So then you're going to challenge my technical abilities and the
No,
time that I can put into this.
Or you could just make
Or
it
you can do
smaller.
it. You could do it.
I could try. That could be interesting.
Yeah.
I promise. If we get enough people to become top shelf patrons, I will try to figure out how to do the scrolling credit.
Can I videotape you trying?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have to have enough names though, and I
think that would. How many more names do we need to do that?
Well, I would think you'll have to tell me about like scale and all, but I think another like 5 would that.
Yeah, 5 more names. We have 5 more names. Chris will work on this, and we'll record a live show of Chris working on this because it will take at least an hour.
It will.
And,
Oh yes,
and
absolutely.
I can help. I can talk you through that,
Okay.
or I don't know. We can figure something out. We've already said everything. Chris,
That needs to be said.
Give me a cue. Let's start the show. Oh, that wasn't good. Here, there's a better one.
Either. But the bar is sort of open.
Well, what was wrong with the second one?
It kind of wobbled a bit. Yeah. All right, whatever. Yep, good,
Okay,
great.
I think. Okay, our topic today is Easy Company. No, not that Easy Company. Company E of the 141st Infantry. It was part of the 36th Division. It was one of the first American units to land in mainland Europe and Italy. It was composed almost entirely of Mexican Americans. And our guest today is Dave Gutierrez. I'm not rolling the R, but I'm working on it. Who is a historian and author who has written the book Patriots from the Barrio about the E Company of the 141st. And Dave is a historian whose articles have appeared in many publications, including American Legion and War History Online. He also specializes in genealogical research, Mexican American history, and World War II studies. Dave Gutierrez, welcome to History Happy Hour.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Wow,
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for being here.
We are delighted to have you. Did you bring a cocktail?
I heard the bell. I had to bring one.
Yeah.
I heard the bell twice.
All right.
Okay.
What do you got?
So I'm a bourbon guy. So I got a little old fashioned here.
Yeah.
but I do smoke my old fashions, and so if you indulge me,
All right.
Yeah. Look at it, guys.
I'm gonna light this sucker up.
Okay, don't kill yourself there.
No, I won't burn myself,
Look at that.
but I like my cocktails smoked. As you can see, the glass will fill with smoke here, and I'll cover it, and we'll come back. We'll come back to it.
Dave, I have to say, I'm not there to taste it, but that has to be the most impressive drink performance in all of history.
That is you have achieved a history happy
Yeah.
hour height.
Even when
There
I'm
you
talking about
go.
your book.
We are in awe. We're in awe. Chris, did you bring a drink?
We have some dirty water with an additive.
All right. Well, I've got some very red wine here. So here's to all of you.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Don't choke. Drinking the good stuff.
Chris, go ahead.
Yeah. So, as Rick enjoys his first glass of wine, Dave, we're talking about the E Company of the 141st Infantry, 36th Division, which has a little bit of a unique story to tell. So obviously, we'll start kind of with the basics. What brought you to this story, and what kind of stood out from you?
So I grew up hearing the stories of a relative of mine who served in World War II, Ramon Gutierrez. He's from Del Rio, Texas. All my family's from Del Rio. Just a little town 3 miles from the Mexican border there in South Texas. And I always heard his stories, and I always wondered why his story was not out there. I knew growing up that he had served in the U.S. Army during World War II, captured twice by the German Army, escaped both times, making it back across Allied lines. He would become one of only a few Americans to be decorated for valor on the battlefield by the Soviet Union during World War II. So I was doing genealogy research, and I kept running across newspaper articles on him. And then I met a cousin of mine who lived here in San Jose that I had never met. And she's also related, of course, to my cousin Ramon. And I decided, I've never written a book before, but this is a story that has to be told. And I started doing research, and then I find out through research that this was the only all-Mexican American U.S. Army unit in World War II, an original Texas National Guard unit out of El Paso, Texas.
Oh.
So I'm back. Oh my gosh.
Thanks, Rick.
I think the smoke got to you.
I think it did. I think that. How is that doing? How's the smoke doing there? Is it? Have we got?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Wow.
There we
Cheers.
go. Okay. I'm going to try to stop coughing again.
Yeah. Right. Easy now.
Dave, you mentioned in the afterword of your book that one of the inspirations for writing this was Ken Burns' 2007 documentary about the war. And specifically, what was the inspiration there?
Well, Ken, for those who are unfamiliar, Ken Burns did this documentary, 14 hours of a documentary on World War II, and yet nothing was mentioned of Hispanic contributions to World War II. I was like dumbfounded that there was nothing on there. And that's something that resonated with me because as I was growing up in school, we were never taught about Hispanic contributions to World War II. As a matter of fact, teachers, whenever World War II came across, they would only talk about the Bracero program, in which the United States government reached out to Mexico to have people brought in to help with in the fields, in field work, and to picking the fruits and picking America's food on their dinner table, and bringing them in for help. And that's about the only time that Hispanics are mentioned in World War II contributions. But we know that 500,000 Hispanics served in World War II, and yet our stories have remained in the shadows of history. And as I was writing this book and getting connected with all these families, I knew I had something very unique in telling this story. And I just hope we get better at recording and documenting our own history.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to get too far from the topic of this unit specific history, but just to sort of set the stage a little bit, Dave, could you tell us a little bit about Del Rio and the community there, and sort of the environment that these boys are coming from?
Yeah. So a lot of them came from El Paso. It was an original Texas National Guard unit out of El Paso. But you mentioned Del Rio, and it's like that. It was like that all along the Southwest and really in the West Coast as well. Is the fact that Mexicans weren't allowed to just those of Mexican American descent were not allowed to live in just anywhere in town. They were really segregated in certain areas, what we call barrios, and that's why I named the title of the book "Patriots from the Barrio." So when I say barrio, it's just the neighborhood of the Mexican section of town. As a matter of fact, the 1930, 1940 U.S. Census record would actually list on the top Mexican town, or the Mexican part of the town. So really, they were literally on the other side of the tracks, basically, where the barrios were. So these were places where there was no paved roads in that section of town. There was no street lights, and they grew up that way. And when you're talking about World War II veterans, you're talking about people that have lived through the Great Depression. So they had to go through all of this. They were totally segregated, and it was like that in El Paso. El Paso was el segundo barrio of El Paso, Texas. And the 36th Division actually had 2 Texas National Guard units in El Paso. Company H was all Anglo. They were all white. But Company E was completely segregated unit made up of all the men from the barrios of El Paso, Texas. And when the 36th Division was federalized in November of 1940, they actually pulled out Mexican Americans from the other Texas National Guard units and placed them into Company E. They maintained a 100%, every enlisted man of Company E was of Mexican American descent. And they actually pulled out guys from other units, from the Dallas area, the Austin, San Antonio area, and they put them in to Company E. So they maintained that until they started taking casualties in Italy.
Okay.
So you write in your book, you say they came from the barrios of Texas and grew up through the Great Depression at a time when the United States government deported Mexican American citizens. They faced discrimination throughout their lives, yet these men served their country proudly when America needed them most. So most of the guys, I imagine, at the time the unit is federalized, are volunteers. They're not drafted. Why were these men willing to volunteer, considering that the American government had engaged in repatriation, was in the Depression, trying to deport people back to Mexico, save those American jobs for real Americans? Why were they willing to say, hey, yeah, I'll join up. I'll join the Army?
One of the big reasons why a lot of these men were part of the Texas National Guard, because the Texas National Guard was paying them a whopping $21 a month to be part of this unit. A lot of them really joined the Texas National Guard to supplement their family's income. They were making more money doing the National Guard than their parents were working, every day in the fields. So that was really why they really joined the Texas National Guard, and then they find themselves right smack in the middle of World War II. And really, as I mentioned, 500,000 Hispanics served in World War II. They were very patriotic.
So, Dave, does this unit have a sense of its identity as Mexican Americans? And the reason I ask is in an earlier show, we had someone on to talk about the Nisei and the Japanese Americans, and they very much were aware of, we are Japanese Americans, right? And so that the unit kind of embraced that identity. were the men in Company E, were they like we are Mexican Americans? This is a Mexican company, a Mexican American company, or is they just were a company and they just happened to get on with the job?
Really they were just trying to do their job, and it was nothing new to them. They have always been segregated. Yeah, we have to remember that this is a time when they were not allowed in certain restaurants. There was actually signs in restaurants that said no Mexicans or dogs allowed. It was nothing new to them to be segregated in an entire division. So when they go to after Pearl Harbor, they find themselves at Camp Blanding, Florida. They had taken part of the Carolina maneuvers, and then they found themselves in Massachusetts. I mean, can you imagine a bunch of kids from barrios of Texas in Yankee territory at Camp
You mean
Edwards?
the best part? I mean, come on, it's like the city.
God's country.
God's country. Just saying.
Talking to a couple of New Englanders here, yeah.
When they go out to on leave, for the first time, these guys are treated like American soldiers. That they weren't used to that, and it was something unique to them.
When they were in the Army, did they'd been dealing with a lot of discrimination before they were in the Army? Does that change when they're in the Army? I mean, obviously they're all segregated into one company, but are they finding
Unfortunately not. And now when they find themselves in Florida and in Massachusetts, things are a little different. But when they were at Camp Bowie in Brownwood, Texas, nothing had changed. As a matter of fact, there's one story of Gabriel Navarrete. Gabriel Navarrete was he had just been promoted to sergeant. And Gabriel Navarrete gets promoted to sergeant, and he decides, let's go out and celebrate. So they go into town. Well, there's not much to do in Brownwood, Texas in 1941. They find a hamburger joint, so they go into the hamburger joint, and they do not serve them. They said, sorry, we're not going to serve. We don't serve Mexicans here. If you guys want food, go to the back door, and we'll give you food there. They were going to bust up the joint. And Gabriel talked him out of it, and they went back to the base. They go back to the base, and Captain Chapin, who was the commanding officer of Company E, comes out to the hamburger establishment with a full bird colonel in tow. And they asked, why are you not serving these American soldiers? And the owner tells the colonel, well, hey, we don't serve Mexicans. And if you don't like it, you can take your Mexicans and get out of here. Well, the colonel goes back to the base, and he puts out a standing order that no military personnel are going to be able to go into that establishment. If they are, they're going to be court-martialed. Well, that restaurant was losing money very fast in Brownwood, Texas. And they went back to the base. The owner goes back to the base and pleads
had a
with
change
them.
of heart.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and serve the Mexicans, and then they allowed the military personnel to visit that establishment, but not before they fined them for not allowing the Mexican Americans to visit that establishment.
You're talking about Navarrete. If I can do a follow up there, Navarrete. He also faces some discrimination in applying for officer candidate school.
Correct. So he's such a good soldier. The officers are saying to him, you should go to officers candidate school. This is while they were training in Brownwood, Texas. So Gabriel Navarrete takes the written test to go to officers candidate school, and he passes the written test. Then he takes the oral test. And he's told after the oral test, they tell him, sorry, Gabriel, we're not going to allow you to go to officers candidate school because you have too much of an accent. That was the reason why he was not allowed to go to officers candidate school. 3 times Gabriel took that test. And 3 times after the oral test, he was denied to go to officers candidate school. And when they land at Salerno, Italy, Gabriel Navarrete is leading the advanced squad when they land at Salerno in September of 1943. He's wounded, goes back to North Africa, and when he returns, it's November of 1943, and they're on Mount Rotundo, and Gabriel Navarrete is commissioned an officer in the United States Army.
So battlefield, you know,
battlefield.
Right.
proved himself
Not
there.
until he proved his bravery on the battlefield was this guy given a battlefield commission and made an officer. And Gabriel Navarrete would go on to command Company E in World War II.
But before that, I mean, that was a question, and I know Lynn Hargrove had asked, where do all their officers come from? Did they have any Hispanic officers, or who are their officers?
Yeah, all their officers were white.
Okay.
At the very outset, when they were training, all their officers were white.
Right. And could you tell us? Do we know anything about these white officers? How they wound up there? How they reacted to their new assignment, and how this company of guys who served together for a while reacted?
Captain Chapin was the commanding officer of Company E, and he really looked out for his men. And several times, Captain Chapin was supposed to be promoted and transferred out of Company E, yet he denied the promotion because they told him, "We're going to promote you, but we're going to have to transfer you to another unit," and he refused. While they were in Italy, he said, "No, I brought these men over here, and I'm going to bring them back." And we can get into a little bit later, but then Captain Chapin is killed in action while crossing the Rapido River.
Well, let's. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was just saying, and what was the reaction to the guys in Company E of getting these white officers? I mean, he's, I guess, as I recall, you said could speak some Spanish or learn Spanish.
Yeah,
you have officers from Massachusetts, and
right.
These are not these are kids from not their neighborhood. How are the men of the company reacting to this?
Well, it's nothing new to them. This is something that they had through training. A lot of these guys were in the Texas National Guard going back to 1939. So for them, this was nothing new.
Right. Okay.
What was new and what was exciting to them is when Gabriel Navarrete was finally made an officer, and now they had one of their own who had risen from the ranks to become the commanding officer of Company E.
Well, yeah. What did they say to him when he became an officer? What did he hear?
Yeah, he got a lot of ribbing, of course, from his guys, but they felt very proud.
So E Company lands on the first day of the invasion in Salerno. They're on the beach, and they're really right in the mob the fighting. And you quote an after-action report that says Company E played a vital part in protecting the beachhead against repeated enemy attacks. Company E was instrumental in keeping the enemy tanks from driving down to the beach itself. And that sounds so ordered and, very clear. But when I read your description of the fighting that day, it sounds a whole lot more chaotic.
Yeah, and chaotic it was. First of all, as they're going towards the beach in the landing crafts, the 36th Division decided not to bomb the beach. They were bombing the peninsula where the Rangers were going to land. And they decided, you know what, we're not going to bomb that area because we don't want to draw people to that area. So they decided not to bomb the beachhead, and they go and land. Well, the Germans had reinforced everything on the beachhead, and they met heavy resistance, including tanks and heavy machine gun fire. Now, Gabriel Navarrete, as we spoke a little bit about, he was leading the advanced squad. My cousin Ramon was part of that squad, and as they land, they're met by 5 enemy tanks and a heavy machine gun that's firing at them. A few of the men are shot. A couple of them are killed right next to my cousin Ramon. And my cousin Ramon would later tell his grandson, I didn't think I was going to live that day. And at this point, I didn't care what happened to me.
We seem to have a problem here.
Froze up.
Okay. Dave, if you can hear us, you are frozen. You're going to have to try to call back in as you're talking about.
I can see you now.
Okay. So you were just saying that
so Ramon
didn't think he was going to survive that day.
Yeah. So he goes all out, and he takes out two Germans that are firing from a German tank. This tank had literally run over purposely one of their men who had been shot through the legs with heavy machine gun fire. This tank goes forward and purposely runs over one of the men of Company E. And Ramon shoots two of the German soldiers from the tank, and then he goes and charges the German machine gun nest. Now, Ramon's carrying the Browning automatic rifle. He gets shot in the right arm, and he loses the Browning automatic rifle. And he continues to try to outflank the machine gun nest without a rifle, and throws a hand grenade inside the pit, and he instantly killed 3 German soldiers. Then Ramon jumped into the foxhole and killed the last German soldier in hand-to-hand combat with a knife. And for that action, he was awarded the Silver Star for his actions at Salerno. And it just so happened that the Soviet Union had went ahead and sent an officer as an observer to observe what was happening in this new front in Italy. The Russians are very eager to see what the Americans and British are going to do with this new front. They're fighting the Russians on the Eastern Front. And so they send an officer to observe, to report back to what is happening. How are the Americans going to do in Italy here? And the officer overhears what my cousin had done. And he would later put in for a medal for my cousin Ramon, and my cousin Ramon would be awarded the Order of Patriotic War, 2nd degree by the Soviet Union.
So Dave, I mean, what was the reaction of other men in the 36th? What was the reaction of other people in the Army to this Mexican-American unit after that landing? Did anything change? Did they start to look at this company differently, or? Really,
the Company E had, once they got formed into the All Mexican American Unit, they really stood out when they were in training. They consistently won the regimental rifle marksmanship for the 141st. When the 36th Division actually pulled out veteran soldiers from other units like Austin, Dallas, and San Antonio area, what they were doing was pulling out veterans who had been serving with the Texas National Guard since 1939. Mm-hmm. So you put a bunch of veterans together, they know what they're doing. So they really excelled in training, and then they would go on to excel on the battlefield as well.
There was as I was reading the book, there were a couple of cases, and one involved Manny Rivera, of people who are wounded or captured, and their families are told that they're killed. They get the telegram and believe that their son has died. And I have not heard a lot of that happening. Maybe Chris, maybe you have, but that struck me as just horrifying, and it must have been devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up Manny Rivera, who was a machine gunner. He was in the weapons platoon of Company E. Manny was really instrumental during the Salerno battle, also. But Manny, and it's funny, we're gonna talk about Manuel Rivera because it's the 19th of January. It's the actual 81st anniversary of the Rapido River. today. And it was today, on the 19th of January in 1944, that Gabriel Navarrete led an advance patrol before the actual crossing of the Rapido River. And Gabriel goes over and hand selects a few guys, including Rocky Segura and Manuel Rivera, who was a machine gunner. Now, Rocky Segura was one of the best swimmers in the company. So Rocky actually swims across the river, and this is in the dead of night that they're going to do this patrol. And he goes and ties a rope to the other side, and then with the pontoon boat, they went ahead and got across the river. Well, the reason why they're doing this patrol is because Gabriel Navarrete, while he's on Mount Trocchio, is overseeing the other side of the river, and he realizes there's machine gun emplacements on the other side of the river, and they're not anywhere on his intelligence maps. So he goes, if we're going to cross the river, because they had already been given orders to cross the river, we need to know what exactly it is we're gonna run across. So Rocky swims across, ties the rope. They actually get across, and they get almost annihilated on the other side of the river. And they make it back across the river. Some of them make it back. Gabriel's wounded badly. Manny Rivera's wounded badly. And, then they go back and they tell the remaining people on the other side, they said, man, if we try to cross here, we're going to be in big trouble. So Manny gets wounded. A couple of weeks later, a telegram arrives in El Paso, Texas, saying, we're sorry to tell you that, Manny Rivera has been killed in action. 3 days go by before another telegram arrives and say, oops, sorry. Man, he's actually just wounded and Manny's doing fine. And you'll be able to write to him at this hospital or something like that. Yeah, but for 3 days, the
family
Rivera
must have been like
El Paso,
insane
Texas,
at that point.
Yeah, and there was actually newspaper articles that came out in El Paso, Texas, that said Manny Rivera was killed in action.
You get to read your own obituary when you come back home.
Yeah, and that happened to my cousin Ramon as well.
So
go ahead.
I was going to say, since it looms so large in the history of this unit, since it's the anniversary, maybe we should spend some time on this action. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what brings these guys to the Rapido River? What's going on? What are we talking about here? And we'll go from there. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and do that. So they land at Salerno in September of 1943. They finally pushed back the Germans, and Salerno was not a cakewalk. I mean, they were almost pushed off the beachhead, and the word Dunkirk was being whispered around during the Salerno invasion. They finally pushed back the Germans north of the Volturno River, and Albert Kesselring, who's the field marshal, the German field marshal who was in charge of all German forces in southern Italy, decides to come up with a plan and make 3 defensive lines in Italy. One he put right north of the Volturno River, and the second line, the Bernhardt line, he would put right in the central mountains of Italy. And the third line he called the Gustav line. He placed right at Monte Cassino using the Rapido River as a main line of defense. Now, Albert Kesselring, his strategy is to try to delay the Allies as much as possible. Meanwhile, around the clock, he was fortifying his defenses at the Gustav line near the Rapido River. Now, after Salerno, the 36, Company E and the 36 was pulled off the lines. They go back into the lines at Mount Rotundo in November, nearly Thanksgiving now, in 1943. They're actually relieving Audie Murphy's unit of the 3rd Division, who was on Mount Rotundo. So they take their places up there, and they're getting shelled every day, taking heavy casualties at Mount Rotundo. Because Mount Rotundo is a small hill overlooking the valley right across San Pietro. And the problem with that is Mount Rotundo is surrounded by other large hills that the Germans occupy. And they're basically looking right down on them and firing at them artillery every day. In December of 1943, they attack the village of San Pietro, where they take heavy casualties. And many are familiar with John Ford's film that was later filmed on the Battle of San Pietro. And again, the 36th Division would lose a lot of men, and including Company E. And Ramon was wounded there at San Pietro again. So here he is, wounded for the second time at San Pietro. And that was December of 1943. In January of 1944, they find themselves on Mount Trocchio, 1 mile from the Rapido River. Now, the 36th Division is led by General Fred Walker. Fred Walker is a veteran of World War I. And during World War I, Fred Walker was leading the 3rd Division at the Marne River. His 3rd Division during World War I was in a defensive position defending the Marne River and slaughtered a large German force who actually tried to cross an open river. They were nicknamed the Rock of the Marne. General Fred Walker is decorated with the Distinguished Service Cross. And now we fast forward to January of 1944. He is now Major General leading the 36th Infantry Division, and he has orders in hand to cross the Rapido River in the dead of winter. And in a span of 48 hours, the 36th Division would lose 2,000 men in its attempt to cross the Rapido River.
There's a quote from General Walker in your book. He says, I do not know of a single case in military history where an attempt to cross a river that is incorporated in the main line of resistance has succeeded, so I am prepared for defeat. And that's what he writes in his diary. Now, here's the thing. You already talked about Gabriel Navarrete. He has crossed over on a patrol. He's been wounded. He comes back and says, hey, guys, this is not going to work. You know, what kind of reaction does he get from his battalion commander? I mean, they don't know that the commanding general is also against the move he's being forced to make. But what kind of reaction does Navarrete get from the battalion commander at that point?
Yeah, so he comes back, and the battalion commander is wanting to know what's
over there.
What's over there? Like? Yeah, and he's like, "Hey, we try to cross here, we're going to get slaughtered." And the battalion commander is telling Gabriel, "We're not going to just cross with the squad. We're crossing with the entire 141st Infantry and the 143rd Infantry. We're going to send 2 regiments across." And Gabriel tells him, "If you do that, we're going to get slaughtered." I guess Gabriel knows exactly what they're up against. And yet Fred Walker has orders in hand. He attempts to try to get them to cross north of where they're asking Fred Walker to cross near San Angelo. But he has orders in hand, and he's going to give it everything they got. And again, they lose nearly 2,000 men. They were either killed, captured, or wounded when they try to cross. It's known as one of the most colossal blunders of the U.S. Army in World War II.
So, Rick,
Chris, it's you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, but I think we should probably mention, because we'll hopefully get a chance to talk about this a little bit in more depth. It's not Walker that gives the order, right? The order is coming from General Clark.
Right. These are the orders that Walker's been given, and he's trying to convince Mark Clark that maybe they should cross a little bit further north.
Right.
But Walker's orders from Mark Clark wants him to cross at San Angelo. And really, I think Mark Clark was really enamored with the thought of having tanks rolling across the Leary Valley and into past the Gustav line. Now we have to keep in mind at the same time that the 36th Infantry Division is given orders to cross the Rapido River, they're landing at Anzio. So we have this enveloping force coming from behind the Gustav line that's landing at Anzio. And we have the 36th Division tying up the Gustav line at the same time.
So look, you can only really describe this time in Italy as blood-soaked. The battalion commander that Navarrete complains to is killed. His replacement is killed. The company commander, Captain Chapin, is killed. His replacement is wounded. Navarrete becomes company commander. He's wounded. Tons of other people are killed and wounded. So the question is, I mean, we're talking about this now. This is what Chris Clark wanted. This is what Walker doesn't want, and Walker is eventually going to be sent back to the United States. Was it worth it? Was there a better way, or was this just the price of war, that we have to move against the Germans in this very tough territory? We have to take the hill with Monte Cassino. We have to get to Rome, and this is just the price that has to be paid.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really the big question there. And really, I just wanted to spit everything out for the readers to try to figure out their interpretation of what really happened. In my personal opinion is this is the price of war. This is what happens when you have an objective and you're sitting there trying to take it out. Now there's a lot of a myth and legend about, oh well, they obviously sent the Mexicans in first and things like that. I try to dispel that because Company E wasn't the first unit that actually crossed the Rapido River. They were not the first unit to engage the Gustav line like that. Now, Gabriel Navarrete did lead a patrol, but there were several patrols across the river. And my cousin Ramon was part of the first one that went across the day before the river. So I try to dispel that. But really, you have to take a look at it. That's known as one of the most colossal blunders of World War II. And when you lose that many men, and it was so controversial that there was a congressional hearing after the war on the Rapido River crossing, because they wanted to know if the officers that made that decision should be held accountable.
Well, okay, well, we're going to pick that up then. So one of our guests has asked, Mark Hool has asked, was Clark held responsible in some formal way for the disaster?
Yeah, so the 36th Division Association after World War II got together, and they realized that, they're trying to give Mark Clark his fifth star and things like that. And they're like, are you kidding me? I mean, this guy they basically said if what he ordered us to do was not murder, I don't know what is. So they put out a resolution on it, and they actually had a congressional hearing. And Fred Walker and several of the officers of the 36th Infantry Division went and testified during that hearing. But really, nothing was really done about it, and nothing was made of it. And there was one point where they had, I believe it was Mark Clark was being asked to be the ambassador
to the Vatican.
And when all the controversy of the 36th Division came up during that, he withdrew his name.
So briefly, this is a lot of the guys are killed or captured. I mean, this is completely, Company E is no longer going to be the company it was. And I'm sure it's involved in the rest of the war, but it's a very different group of people.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, so they're starting to take casualties at Salerno, Mount Rotondo, San Pietro. They get to the Rapido River, and the 141st and 143rd Infantry Regiments are basically wiped out. So Company E crossed with 184 men at the Rapido River. Only 27 of them came back. They were either killed, wounded, or captured. So we have this new people coming in, and they were still at Monte Cassino. When we actually bombed Monte Cassino, the abbey at Monte Cassino in February of 44, they were still on the line. They were still there until they got brought over to Anzio later. One of the men that crossed the Rapido River was a guy named Morris Crane from Kentucky. He crossed with Alex Carrillo Jr., or Alex Carrillo, I should say, from El Paso, and Santiago Jaramillo. They were all part of the weapons platoon. They were mortarmen. And they get across, and they're captured. And they're sitting there, and they have one German soldier who's guarding them on the German side of the river. Well, Alex Carrillo from El Paso says, man, we're captured. I don't know when is the next time I'm going to eat. He starts opening up a can of sea rations, right? And the German soldier who was there goes, what are you doing? Put that away. And then the German soldier gets shot somehow, and he drops his rifle. Santiago Jaramillo jumps the German soldier, wrestles the machine gun away, or his rifle away from him, and shoots him. And those three men, Santiago Jaramillo, Alex Carrillo, and Morris Crane, after 24 hours would swim back, and they were one of only 27 men to come back. Morris Crane would later go on to be awarded the Medal of Honor in France. He was killed in France.
Mm.
So, Dave, you've talked about these devastating losses, but of course the 36th Division stays in combat. It still has a whole lot of war left. What sort of replacements is E Company getting? Do they stay a Mexican-American unit? Do they keep their identity? Carry the story forward a bit.
Yeah, so... and the answer to that was no, they weren't just an all Mexican American unit. As they're taking casualties in World War II, the U.S. Army is not going to care if you're only Mexicans going to this. If you're breathing, you're going to Company. They're looking for any live bodies, right? So there was none of this segregation piece that was going on with that. And again, we know that Mexican Americans, Hispanic Americans served in all branches of service during World War II. But that's what really made Company E and the 141st very unique, in the fact that they started out that way as an all Mexican American unit. And it was the only such unit in World War II. So as they're moving forward, no, they were no longer an all Mexican American unit.
So when the soldiers who were Mexican American came back to the United States after either getting out of the hospital or getting out of German prison camps or just surviving, did they kind of reap the rewards of being GIs who fought in Europe, or did they find themselves basically back in the same old boat, once again harassed by racism and discrimination?
Yeah, unfortunately, when they got back, they realized nothing really has changed in Texas. They were still not allowed in bars. They were still not allowed in certain restaurants. Really, it wasn't until Dr. Hector Garcia, who had come from a family of doctors from Mexico. Dr. Hector Garcia from Corpus Christi, Texas, had served as a doctor in the U.S. Army. He comes back and from the Army in World War II, and he realizes that many of the Mexican Americans who had served during World War II don't actually realize that they can, apply for the GI Bill and things like that. So Dr. Hector Garcia forms the GI Forum, which really became a civil rights movement, really, because they got heavily involved in a lot of things. We can credit the GI Forum and Dr. Hector Garcia for having John F. Kennedy elected and winning the state of Texas with that. So really, it wasn't until then that they realized they come back from war, they live through all of that, and they come back. They're no longer going to take the fact that, hey, we can't go into that bar. They were no longer going to take that. So a lot of the mindset changed with a lot of these veterans.
Yeah. Well, and I got to say, one of the stories that I found so moving was about your uncle, and he gets the Soviet medal, which is a little unusual.
Right.
He comes home. He has plenty of issues to deal with because there's not this great support system for any of the veterans, not just the company guys. But he's given sort of a unique offer. So maybe you could tell folks a little bit about that story and what his reaction to all that was.
Yeah. So Ramon makes it back. Let me get into how Ramon gets back a little bit.
Yeah.
So after the Rapido River, Ramon is actually captured at the Rapido River, and he makes it back. He makes it back across the river. He's one of the 27 men that came back. Now he's also PFC at the time. He's promoted to sergeant right after the Rapido River. I mean, he's one of only a few men that really has combat experience. So he's made a sergeant. So they get to Anzio, and they're part of the battle at Vellatri. Ramon is now leading an advanced squad, and they get overrun with a German counterattack at the Battle of Vellatri. He's taken prisoner. They take him in the back. They realize he's a sergeant with the stripes on his sleeves, and they interrogate him, and they're beating him. And they want information because now the Allies are moving closer to Rome, and they want to know who's coming, what's going on. He's getting stabbed in the back with a bayonet, and an Allied bomb hits the building that they're holding him in. And through all the confusion, Ramon gets out through a hole in the wall, and there's actually Italian villagers that hide him for a few days until Americans come through. Ramon is in a hospital for a few weeks until they tell him he's ready to go back to the unit, and they tell him, "Oh no, you're not going back to the unit. You have to go back to the States because you're requested at Washington D.C. to pick up a medal that the Soviet Union gave you." So Ramon comes back to the States, goes to Washington to pick up this Russian medal from Cordell Hall, the Secretary of State. And then he's honorably discharged from the U.S. Army. So Ramon comes back with PTSD, with everything that he had gone through in World War II. And after a while, he gets a letter from the Russian consulate in San Francisco that they want to meet with him because, he's a Russian hero of the Soviet. Well, it's now the Cold War, right? I mean, the Cold War starts immediately after World War II. And Ramon goes to San Francisco and to the Russian consulate, and they sit him down and they said, you're a hero of the Soviet Union. We decorated you, with a medal. We're offering you to come live in the Soviet Union, and we're going to give you this, rental apartment for free, and you could travel freely throughout the country whenever you want because you're a hero of the Soviet Union. Ramon realizes that, they just want to use him as propaganda. Probably he didn't even answer them. He's sitting down in an office, and he just gets up and he walks out the door and never gives him an answer. And he would later say that, this is the greatest country in the world. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
We're almost out of time, so there's certainly a lot more that we could talk about. A very fascinating story, but there's I'm sure you can't say too much about it, but there's a movie effort underway of some sort. Where is that at? How much of a chance is there that we're going to see these guys on the silver screen in the next 5 years?
Yes, so I originally self-published the book in 2014, and in 2017, Hollywood actor-producer Wilmer Valderrama, who's famously on That 70s Show and is currently on NCIS, his production company picked up the film rights to it, and they're looking to produce either a film or a TV series based on the true story.
And Dave, you could also add, I know you've got another project that's talking about the role of Mexican Americans in the war. So maybe if you don't mind teasing that a bit, because we'd love to have you back on that front as well.
Yeah. So I just recently completed my second book, and the second book is on the life of Lieutenant Oscar Perdomo, who served with the 464th Fighter Squadron. He was a P-47. He was trained in P-47 fighters. This is a guy that was born in El Paso, raised. His family moves to East LA when he's like 2 years old. Oscar Perdomo grows up in the Boyle Heights area of East LA, goes to Garfield High School there, and he's always dreamed of flying. He gets trained in these P-47, and his unit is flying their P-47s out of Lashima. It's already late in 1945, and it's August, and we had already dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan, and they had not surrendered. So these guys are still flying missions, and on August 13th, Oscar Perdomo's unit goes up and flies a mission, and they're attacked by enemy fighters. Oscar shoots down 5 enemy planes in one day to become the last American ace in a day of World War II. Now, for those of you familiar with the term ace, you have to shoot down 5 enemy planes in your career. Oscar does this in one day. He's the last American to do so. Very few know his story. I reached out to his son, Ken, a few years ago and was able to put his story together. And I actually got together with a lot of the families of the guys that flew with him in the 464th Fighter Squadron to be able to tell their story.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, we have to have you back on. Dave, this has been a terrific hour with you here. We've been talking with Dave Gutierrez, who's the author of Patriots from the Barrio, the story of Company E, 141st Infantry, the only all-Mexican-American Army unit in World War II. And even though I almost choked on my wine at the beginning, and you lit your drink on fire, that was the beginning of the show, and it just went from there. So thank you so much for joining us today on History Happy Hour.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, and good luck to the History Happy Hour. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, next week we have an encore episode, and this is about the year that changed Winston Churchill's life. And we'll talk to J. Furman Daniel, author of Blood, Mud, and Oil Paint, the remarkable year that made Winston Churchill.
Excellent. Well, he's up. Everybody likes it. Yes, everybody likes hearing about Winston.
Yes, and it was a fun episode, so we'll have him back on. Hey guys, thank you so much. Please subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, shout at us on Blue Sky, listen to our podcast, back us on Patreon, and browse historyhappyhour.com.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.